Have you ever wondered why the smartest people you know often walk alone? Why they disappear into silence while others chase noise? There's something different about them, something you can't quite describe but can always feel. Their presence carries a quiet intensity, as if they see life through a lens no one else can understand. Stay with me until the end of this video, because by the time you finish, you'll understand why solitude isn't a curse. For the intelligent, it's a hidden form of power. Intelligent people live in a different rhythm. They don't move with the crowd, they observe it. They don't speak to fill silence. They speak to express meaning. Their minds are deep oceans where most people only swim at the surface, and in that depth, there is both beauty and pain. Beauty because they can see the world as it truly is, and pain because very few can meet them there. The average mind is busy seeking entertainment, the intelligent mind seeks understanding, and that quest often leads them away from others. When you think deeply, you stop fitting in easily. You start noticing things that others overlook, the hidden intentions behind words, the emptiness in social rituals, the patterns that most people ignore. You begin to question everything, not to rebel, but to find truth. But in a world that rewards conformity, questioning makes you an outsider. People might call you distant, cold, or even arrogant, but they don't see what's really happening inside you. They don't see the storm of thoughts you're managing, the ideas you're constantly wrestling with, or the meaning you're trying to create from the chaos around you. Intelligence often brings awareness, and awareness can be heavy. You notice contradictions, hypocrisy, the endless noise of society trying to tell you what to be. You see how people talk endlessly but say nothing real, and because you crave depth, you find yourself withdrawing. Not because you hate people, but because you long for something real, a conversation that feeds your soul instead of draining it. But here's the truth that few realize: solitude is not the absence of company, it's the presence of self. Intelligent people understand this early. They find comfort not in being surrounded, but in being understood. And when no one understands them, they turn inward, not out of weakness, but out of necessity. They discover that peace doesn't come from others. It comes from inner clarity. They learn that silence is not empty. It's full of answers that noise can never give. There's also a quiet rebellion in their aloneness. They refuse to play the games others play, the race for attention, the chase for validation. They are not easily influenced by trends or opinions, because their self-worth isn't built on applause. They prefer honesty over approval, and that makes them rare. Their solitude becomes a filter. It keeps away the shallow and attracts the genuine. That's why intelligent people don't have many friends, but the few they do have are real, raw, and deeply meaning. Psychologically, this solitude is a form of emotional protection. When you see too much, you feel too much. And when you feel too much, the world can overwhelm you. So you step back, not because you don't care, but because you care too deeply. You need space to process, to think, to heal. Intelligent people instinctively know that their energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it. They understand that constant exposure to shallow energy drains creativity, focus, and peace. If you've ever felt like you don't fit in, like you're watching life happen from the outside, you're not broken. You might just be seeing more clearly than most. The more you evolve mentally and emotionally, the more your circle naturally shrinks. It's not rejection, it's refinement. Life quietly removes the noise so you can hear your own thoughts. That silence isn't loneliness, it's alignment. And yet, being alone can feel confusing at first. You might wonder why deep connection feels so rare. But remember, only a few can truly meet you where your mind lives. And that's okay. You weren't meant to dim your thoughts to fit into shallow spaces. You were meant to rise above them. Every great thinker, every creator, every visionary in history walked the lonely path of thought before the world caught up. You're not isolated, you're preparing. So if you ever find yourself sitting in silence while others fill the air with noise, know this: your silence has meaning. It's in that silence that your ideas grow, your strength builds, and your vision sharpens. Intelligent people are often alone because their souls crave something deeper, something the world isn't ready to give. Stay with me until the end of this video, because in the next moments you'll discover how this solitude, the same one that feels heavy now, can become the very source of your power, purpose, and peace. The loneliness you feel today might just be life's way of guiding you back to yourself. When your mind never stops thinking, silence isn't peace, it's pressure. Intelligent people often live inside this mental storm. Their thoughts run faster, dig deeper, and connect everything. They notice the smallest details, question every choice, and replay moments that most people forget. What seems simple to others becomes layered and complex in their minds. Overthinking is both their gift and their burden, a light that shows them truth, and a shadow that steals their calm. It begins with awareness. The intelligent mind doesn't just see what happens, it analyzes why it happens. Every word spoken, every glance, every pause holds meaning. And because they understand those hidden meanings, they can't unsee them. They sense dishonesty in kindness, emptiness in enthusiasm, and patterns in behavior that most overlook. The more they see, the more cautious they become. Their mind becomes a radar for what's real and what's not, and that radar never turns off. But constant awareness comes with a price. It makes rest feel impossible. Their thoughts dawn. Sleep? They orbit around possibilities, mistakes, and meanings. They replay conversations in their head, wondering what was left unsaid. They anticipate outcomes before they happen. Even happiness can feel fragile because the mind quickly questions how long it will last. They live in two worlds, the one around them, and the one endlessly unfolding inside their head. This mental intensity often isolates them. While others can laugh without thinking twice, they pause to analyze the emotion behind the laughter. While others speak freely, they filter their words, calculating how they'll be received. This inner dialogue creates distance. People around them sense the depth but don't understand the weight of it. It's not arrogance, it's mental exhaustion. When your mind runs at full speed all the time, connection requires energy that's hard to give. Overthinking also builds invisible walls. It creates hesitation where there should be freedom. Intelligent people fear hurting others, being misunderstood, or making the wrong impression. So they hold back not because they don't care, but because they care too much. They analyze before they act, reflect before they speak, and in doing so, they sometimes miss the simple joy of being present. Their mind becomes both a sanctuary and a prison, a place of wisdom and worry all at once. Yet behind this overthinking lies deep sensitivity. Intelligent people don't just think deeply, they feel deeply. Every emotion lingers longer, every disappointment cuts deeper, every truth shines brighter. This emotional intelligence makes them compassionate, but it also leaves them vulnerable. They read energy before words, sense moods before explanations. It's an extraordinary ability, but it can make the world feel too loud, too fast, too fake. Still, there's beauty in this curse. Overthinking can lead to profound insight, creativity, and empathy. The same mind that overanalyzes pain can also uncover extraordinary solutions and ideas. The key is learning not to fight the mind, but to guide it to turn its depth from worry into wisdom. When an intelligent person learns to observe their thoughts without drowning in them, solitude becomes serenity instead of suffering. And that transformation marks the beginning of true inner freedom. One of the hardest things for intelligent people to accept is that depth often feels like distance. The deeper they think, the more separated they become from those around them. It's not intentional, it's the natural result of seeing the world differently. When you crave meaning, truth, and emotional honesty, the ordinary starts to lose its color. You stop finding joy in small talk, in empty compliments, in the comfortable rhythm of shallow connections. You long for something more, something that challenges your mind and stirs your soul. But most of the world isn't looking for that kind of connection, and that's where the misunderstanding begins. To most people, depth feels uncomfortable when you speak about real things. About pain, purpose, or the truth behind appearances, many turn away. They'd rather stay in the safe zone of distraction, gossip, and temporary pleasure. Intelligent people, on the other hand, see through the illusion. They sense when words are hollow, when energy doesn't match intention, when people wear masks just to be accepted. This awareness makes it difficult to fully engage with the world's surface-level rhythm. They can't fake interest in things that don't matter, and because of that, others mistake their silence for arrogance or coldness. In reality, their quietness often hides a heart that feels too much. They listen more than they speak because they process everything deeply, every word, every emotion, every contradiction. When others misunderstand them, they don't rush to defend themselves. They simply retreat. They've learned that most people don't want truth, they want comfort. And so, they build walls made not of pride, but of protection. The misunderstanding goes even deeper. People assume that intelligent individuals prefer isolation, but that's not true. They crave connection, just not the kind that drains their soul. They want conversations that expand minds, relationships built on authenticity, and silence that feels peaceful instead of awkward. They want presence, not performance. But when they realize how rare that is, they start to choose solitude over pretense. Their aloneness becomes a quiet protest against superficiality. This distance can be lonely, but it's also purifying. It teaches them the difference between being liked and being understood. It helps them recognize that emotional depth is a rare language, one that only a few can speak. And instead of trying to translate themselves to fit in, they begin to accept that not everyone is meant to meet them at their level. This acceptance brings peace. They stop trying to shrink their thoughts to make others comfortable. They stop explaining their silence. They stop apologizing for their sensitivity. Psychologically, this is an act of self-preservation. When you live with depth, you realize that your energy must be guarded carefully. You understand that not every space deserves your presence, and not every person deserves access to your inner world. So, intelligent people learn to walk alone not because they reject others, but because they refuse to betray their truth just to belong. Being misunderstood hurts, but it also liberates. Because once you stop needing to be understood by everyone, you free yourself from the weight of their expectations. You begin to see that the very depth that isolates you is also what defines you. It's what makes your thoughts original, your vision clear, and your presence rare. And in a world that celebrates noise, being misunderstood might just be the highest form of authenticity. There comes a moment in every intelligent person's life when their mind and their heart start pulling in opposite directions. The intellect sees life through logic, analysis, and reason. It calculates, it observes, it dissects everything into cause and effect. The heart, however, doesn't care about logic, it just wants to feel. It craves warmth, belonging, and connection, and when both exist inside the same person, life becomes a quiet battle between knowing too much and feeling too deeply. The intelligent mind often protects itself through reasoning. It wants to understand why people act the way they do, why love fades, why loyalty breaks, why silence replaces words. It builds explanations for everything, because understanding gives a sense of control. But emotions don't follow those rules. You can understand why someone hurt you and still feel the pain. You can logically accept why something ended and still miss it deeply. This constant conflict creates an invisible heaviness, a feeling of being torn between clarity and chaos. It's this inner conflict that often pushes intelligent people towards solitude. They feel too much to ignore their emotions but think too much to act on them recklessly. Their mind says, stay calm, while their heart whispers, you're breaking. They analyze the very feelings they're supposed to simply experience. And while others can lose themselves in emotion or impulse, they can't. They observe their pain like a scientist, trying to find meaning in it. It's not detachment, it's self-preservation. Their intellect becomes a shield to keep their emotions from consuming them completely. This struggle also makes relationships difficult. Intelligent people can read emotional patterns like open books. They notice tone, body language, energy shifts. They can sense lies before they are spoken and intentions before they're revealed. It's a blessing to see so clearly, but it's also a curse. When you understand people too deeply, disappointment comes too easily. You begin to realize that not everyone feels with the same intensity or honesty that you do. And so, you start to guard your emotions not because you've stopped caring, but because you've learned that few can handle the depth of your care. Psychologically, this inner war drains energy. The intellect wants control, the heart wants release. The more you analyze your emotions, the more detached you become from their natural flow. Yet, if you surrender completely to your feelings, the mind screams for order. It's like living between two worlds, one of logic, one of love, never fully belonging to either. But here lies the quiet truth. This struggle is not a weakness, it's a form of awakening. When your mind and heart collide, they eventually teach each other balance. The intellect learns compassion, and the heart learns clarity. You begin to understand that intelligence isn't about escaping emotion, it's about embracing it with awareness. You learn that vulnerability doesn't make you less intelligent, it makes you more human. And in that understanding, peace slowly begins to form. You realize that being both wise and sensitive is not a curse, but a rare harmony, a union of reason and empath. That allows you to see life completely. The mind shows you truth. The heart reminds you to feel it. And when both work together, loneliness turns into wisdom and pain turns into power. After fighting so long to balance mind and emotion, intelligent people eventually develop a quiet fear, the fear of shallow connections. It's not that they don't want people around them. It's that they've learned how costly surface-level relationships can be. They've felt the emptiness of conversations that go nowhere, the hollowness of smiles that mean nothing, and the fatigue that comes from pretending to fit in. They've discovered that not all company heals, some only drains, and so they begin to choose solitude not out of pride, but out of self-respect. When you think and feel deeply, superficial energy feels loud, disorienting, even painful. Intelligent people crave depth, words that carry meaning, moments that feel alive, people who are real. But in a world addicted to performance, finding authenticity feels like searching for silence in a storm. Most people talk to be heard, the intelligent talk to connect. They don't want noise, they want resonance. And when they don't find it, they pull back, creating a distance that others mistake for coldness. But that distance isn't rejection, it's protection. They've learned, often through heartbreak, that not everyone deserves access to their inner world. Some come only to take attention, energy, peace, and leave emptiness behind. So they set quiet boundaries, not out of anger, but to guard what's sacred within them. This kind of withdrawal isn't loneliness, it's healing. It's the realization that it's better to walk alone in truth than to sit surrounded by pretense. Over time, this selective solitude becomes a sign of maturity. Intelligent people begin to value quality over quantity, energy over excitement, and meaning over popularity. They'd rather have one soul who understands them than 100 who only know their name. They stop chasing validation because they finally understand that real connection can't be forced. It flows naturally between minds that think alike and hearts that feel alike. And until they find that energy, they'd rather stay in their own company. Psychologically, this choice is empowering. It shifts the focus from external acceptance to internal peace. The intelligent person realizes that relationships should not cost you your calm. They learn to observe who brings light and who brings noise. They begin to listen not just to words, but to how their spirit feels after spending time with someone. This self-awareness transforms their solitude into strength. They understand that peace is not found in people, it's maintained within. And when they finally meet someone who mirrors their depth, they recognize it instantly. The conversation flows effortlessly. Silence feels safe, and presence feels real. That kind of connection doesn't drain, it expands. But until that moment arrives, they continue to protect their energy, choosing stillness over chaos and authenticity over company. Because for an intelligent soul, loneliness with purpose is far more peaceful than togetherness without meaning. Once an intelligent person stops fearing loneliness and begins embracing it, something extraordinary happens. Solitude transforms from emptiness into strength. What once felt like isolation starts to feel like clarity. When the noise of others fades, the voice within becomes louder, wiser, and more grounded. In the stillness of their own company, intelligent people rediscover who they are without the world's influence. And that is where their true power begins to grow. In solitude, the mind that once overanalyzed begins to settle. Thoughts that used to spiral now start to align. The constant need to understand others turns into a desire to understand oneself. And this shift is profound. It marks the moment when intelligence turns inward, when wisdom stops seeking validation and begins creating its own meaning. Alone, intelligent people find what they could never find in the crowd, a deep connection with their inner truth. The world often confuses solitude with loneliness, but they are not the same. Loneliness is craving company. Solitude is embracing presence. When you are alone and at peace, you begin to see how much energy is wasted on things that don't matter. You realize how often people talk just to fill silence and chase distractions to avoid thinking. But in solitude, every quiet moment becomes a mirror. You face your fears, your desires, your purpose. You see who you really are when no one's watching, and that kind of awareness is powerful beyond measure. Psychologically, solitude allows the mind to reset. It strengthens emotional regulation, improves focus, and deepens creativity. The intelligent person who once felt burdened by constant thought now learns to direct that mental energy into creation, growth, and reflection. Ideas begin to flourish in the stillness. Clarity replaces confusion. Purpose replaces anxiety. What was once a painful silence becomes a sacred space of renewal. Many great minds throughout history have drawn their strength from solitude. It is not the isolation itself that empowers them, but what they discover within it. Solitude strips away illusions, the false need for approval, the pressure to belong, the fear of being misunderstood. It reveals what truly matters: peace of mind, integrity, and authenticity. The intelligent person realizes that their solitude is not punishment, it's preparation. It's where they recharge, where they build resilience, where they find direction before stepping back into the world. This transformation changes how they move through life. They stop seeking energy from others because they've learned how to generate their own. They become calm in chaos, centered amid confusion, grounded in truth. Their silence speaks louder than words, and their presence begins to radiate quiet confidence. Solitude teaches them that power doesn't come from control or influence, it comes from self-mastery. And once an intelligent person learns to master their inner world, nothing external can truly disturb them. They understand now that peace is not found in avoiding solitude, but in owning it, turning what once felt like emptiness into the very foundation of their strength. Solitude, once embraced, becomes the gateway to one of life's most profound experiences: self-understanding. When the intelligent person stops running from silence and begins to listen within it, they uncover truths that no conversation or relationship could ever reveal. They begin to see the patterns of their own mind, the roots of their emotions, and the reasons behind their choices. What once felt like loneliness now feels like awakening. It's as if the fog that once clouded their thoughts slowly lifts, revealing the path that was always there, waiting for them to see it clearly. Through solitude, they begin to meet themselves, not the version shaped by expectations, but the authentic self that has been buried beneath noise and pressure. They see their strengths with humility and their flaws with compassion. This kind of self-awareness doesn't come from external validation, it comes from deep reflection. Intelligent people start to realize that the answers they've been searching for in others were always hidden within. Every heartbreak, every misunderstanding, every period of isolation was not punishment, it was guidance. Life wasn't pushing them away from others, it was guiding them back home to themselves. This self-understanding changes everything. It shifts the way they think, feel, and interact. They stop chasing people who drain them and start attracting those who reflect their truth. They stop explaining themselves to those who never listened. They stop waiting for others to validate their worth. They finally understand that peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself. Psychologically, this stage represents emotional maturity. The intelligent person learns that self-awareness is not just knowledge, it's healing. By understanding their own triggers, they stop being controlled by them. By seeing their patterns, they stop repeating them. They begin to forgive, not because others deserve forgiveness, but because they deserve peace. The mind that once overthought every word now learns to let go. The heart that once ached for connection now finds contentment in stillness. With this awakening comes a new kind of strength, the strength of quiet confidence. Intelligent people no longer feel the need to prove their intelligence or defend their solitude. They start to live with intention, not reaction. Every decision becomes deliberate, every word measured, every silence purposeful. They realize that growth is not about adding more to their life, but about removing what doesn't align with their truth. And as they grow in this awareness, their solitude no longer feels like isolation, it becomes sacred. It's where they return to realign their energy, where they think without distraction, where they dream without limits. In knowing themselves deeply, they begin to live freely. They no longer seek meaning outside, because they've discovered that the deepest meaning of life begins within. This is the moment when loneliness transforms into enlightenment, when being alone no longer hurts, but heals. Because once an intelligent person truly understands themselves, they no longer walk in solitude out of necessity. They walk in it by choice, guided by peace, purpose, and the quiet strength of self-awareness. When an intelligent person finally reaches the point of self-understanding, solitude transforms once again, this time into something sacred, calm, and deeply beautiful. What was once seen as isolation now feels like freedom. The same silence that once felt heavy now becomes their sanctuary. They no longer associate being alone with being unloved, because they've discovered the quiet joy that comes from being complete within themselves. Peaceful isolation is no longer a wound to heal, but a home to return to. In this stage of awareness, intelligent people begin to experience life differently. They walk slower, think clearer, and see deeper. They no longer rush to fill the silence or force connection, because they've learned that not every space needs words, and not every void needs company. There is a quiet contentment in simply